Employees humiliate the black janitor without knowing who she really is. But when they discover that she is the true owner of the company, they are completely shocked. What if the person you underestimate every day is the key to your downfall? Rachel Johnson's life, a 45-year-old janitor, is not what it seems. Though she appears simple, her true identity is a secret that could transform everything around her. Rachel, a black woman who grew up in a poor neighborhood, has always felt the weight of prejudice and hardship. Since she was young, she dreamed of one day having control over her life and her future. With resilience and intelligence, she worked hard, studied at night, and made investments that led her to become the owner of the company where she is treated as invisible. The setting is a modern office in New York, where Rachel cleans the common areas, while Michael Stevens, the arrogant financial manager, and his assistant, Emily Rogers, look down on her. The environment is hostile and challenging, filled with derogatory comments that hit her daily. Rachel observes and listens, absorbing each insult, but also every whisper of ambition and dishonesty from Michael, who is planning a financial fraud. Tension mounts as she realizes that she holds the chance to expose the true face of the company and its employees. Meanwhile, Emily, who idolizes Michael, begins to feel internal turmoil. Her relentless quest for approval leads her to participate in humiliating Rachel, hoping to secure a promotion. But is this truly the formula for success? As Rachel approaches the climax of her story, doubt about what really matters in life begins to haunt Emily. The central conflict unfolds in an environment that should be safe but turns into an emotional battleground. Rachel, knowing every detail of Michael's plans, prepares to reveal her identity. In a crucial meeting, the moment of truth finally arrives, and Rachel's revelation not only challenges everyone's perceptions, but also forces Emily to confront her choices. Rachel's story is more than a fight against prejudice. It is a journey of self-discovery and redemption that resonates with anyone who as appearances dissolve and the true essence of people is exposed, it becomes clear that the value of each individual is not measured by their social position, but by the integrity they carry within themselves. Rachel Johnson knew that the day started like any other. She woke up early while the city was still shrouded in the morning mist. Looking in the mirror, she remembered the hardships she had faced over the years and how hard she had fought to get here. Working as a janitor in a modern office in New York was not what she had dreamed of, but it was an important part of her journey. With every step she took, the pressure of the heavy environment became more evident. The day began hectic, with Michael Stevens, the financial manager, and his assistant Emily Rogers exchanging loud comments about the invisible employees who cleaned the office. Rachel heard the laughter and jokes made at her expense, feeling the pain of each word. As she wiped the floor, she thought about how many times she had to swallow her anger and frustration, keeping her head held high and focusing on what truly mattered, her goal of a better future. But today, there was something different in the air. Rachel sensed a change, a tension that permeated the office corridors. Michael was more nervous than usual, and that triggered her survival instinct. She knew he was involved in something illegal, a fraud that could ruin lives, and that left her uneasy. Each day it became harder to ignore what she knew, and the more she listened to the conversations, the more aware she became that her silence could come at a high cost. Emily, on the other hand, was lost in her quest for approval. The young assistant, with her neatly styled blonde hair and designer clothes, saw herself as an extension of Michael's ambition. She admired him and believed that by siding with him, she would have the chance to climb the company hierarchy. However, with every joke she laughed at, a part of her questioned whether this was really the path she wanted to take. The pressure to please Michael made her nervous, and in moments of doubt she looked at Rachel, who, despite her condition, seemed to possess a strength she herself lacked. Meanwhile, Rachel struggled with the idea of exposing Michael. The tension between them grew, and the awareness that she might be the only one to stop him left her in a dilemma. She felt alone and vulnerable, but also had a growing determination. Memories of her childhood, when she dreamed of being someone important, pushed her forward. It was time to claim her space and show that she was not invisible. The first obstacle arose when Rachel decided to look for evidence of Michael's illegal activities. She began to pay closer attention to the documents she cleaned and the whispers she heard. However, as she delved deeper into her search, she felt the weight of responsibility. Any misstep could mean not only the loss of her job, but also her safety. It was a fine line between courage and fear, and Rachel found herself questioning her inner strength. Did she really have what it took to make this change? The challenge intensified when Emily, noticing that Rachel was being more discreet than usual, began to wonder what might be happening. The young assistant, in her quest for acceptance, decided to approach Rachel, not out of empathy but out of curiosity. This unexpected interaction brought forth an unusual friendship, but also threw Rachel into an emotional whirlwind. She knew she couldn't fully trust Emily, but the connection that had started to form between them felt genuine. As Rachel faced these new dynamics, the pressure mounted. Michael's comments became more frequent and derisive, and the feeling of being watched by the assistant left her uneasy. This forced her to reflect on her deep-seated beliefs, questioning whether she should continue to fight or whether it would be safer to remain silent. Each day, each interaction turned into an emotional battle, but they also brought valuable lessons. Even under pressure, Rachel began to realize that her journey was not just about exposing Michael's fraud. It was an opportunity to redefine her worth and her place in the world. With each challenge, she remembered how hard she had fought to get to this point. With that, her determination to move forward grew, and she decided that regardless of what happened, she would no longer be invisible. The struggle was just beginning, and with it, the chance to rewrite her story. Rachel was aware that the decision to investigate Michael's activities would not be easy. With each passing day, her heart felt heavier, as if an internal storm was brewing. She not only had to face the fear of retaliation, but also the possibility of finding herself in a situation where she would have to deal with the consequences of her actions. With the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, her mind spun in a whirlwind of thoughts about what to do next. While cleaning the tables, she found herself watching Michael and Emily. The way Michael moved through the office, always self-assured, irritated her. He was the kind of man who exploited the fragility of others, making her feel powerless. With each laugh, each carefree gesture, Rachel felt her determination grow, but also a shadow of doubt. Was she ready to confront him? What would happen to her job, her safety, if things didn't go as planned? Emily, on the other hand, was increasingly intrigued by Rachel's new attitude. She couldn't understand why the cleaner had become so reserved. The young assistant began to ask subtle questions, trying to figure out what was happening. This made Rachel even more uncomfortable. She had to be careful, as any slip could give Michael the chance to silence her before she could act. It felt like walking a tightrope, and she feared that one misstep could lead to her downfall. On a particularly tense morning, Rachel decided it was time to take action. During a break, she sneaked into the file room, where she knew she could find documents that might prove Michael's fraud. Her heart raced as she opened drawers, rifling through papers and notes. But, to her frustration, all she found was a pile of seemingly harmless documents. Her sense of helplessness enveloped her, and for a moment she questioned whether the risk was truly worth it. The tension escalated when, upon exiting the file room, Rachel came face to face with Michael. He watched her with a penetrating gaze, and she felt a chill run down her spine. "Is everything all right, Rachel?" he asked, his tone sounding more like a threat than a concern. She forced a smile and shook her head, but insecurity overwhelmed her. Michael was cunning and knew something was wrong. It was only a matter of time before he discovered what she was up to. The emotional pressure began to affect Rachel physically. Nights became long and restless, and she felt exhausted during the day. Her concentration on daily tasks faltered, and her body began to respond to the stress with constant back pain and a deep sense of fatigue. What should have been a simple work routine transformed into a daily struggle against anxiety and fear. Noticing the change in Rachel's behavior, Emily decided to reach out. She began offering help with daily tasks, trying to break the barrier that had formed between them. However, the budding friendship also brought new challenges. Rachel found herself torn between trusting Emily and protecting her secrets. The young assistant was a welcome distraction, but also a source of emotional confusion. In one of these interactions, Emily asked a question that caught Rachel off guard. "Have you ever thought about what it's like to be in control of your life? I admire your strength, you know." These words touched Rachel's heart, but also left her vulnerable. She knew she couldn't share her true feelings, but doubts began to creep into her mind. Did she really have the strength to face the challenges ahead? Or would it be easier to remain in the shadows, where she was invisible but safe? As the days passed, things began to intensify. Michael, noticing that Rachel was more aware of his movements, started to pressure her. He frequently called her in for extra tasks, and every time she saw him, her tension grew. With each interaction, Rachel felt her courage being tested. It was a constant struggle between the need to protect herself and the desire to take action. Finally, on a rainy afternoon, when the pressure felt unbearable, Rachel decided she could wait no longer. She had found a crucial document, and with her heart racing, she knew she had to act. But at the same time, doubt settled in once again. What would happen if Michael discovered she was getting involved where she shouldn't? And if she exposed the truth, would she end up losing everything she had worked for? Rachel was at a decisive moment. This choice wasn't just about unmasking Michael. It was about her life, her future, and the chance to no longer be invisible. In the midst of this struggle, Rachel's friendship with Emily was becoming a fragile thread, ready to snap. Rachel knew she needed to make a decision, and the weight of that choice would follow her, no matter which path she decided to take. Rachel was at a crossroads. The burden of the decision consumed her, and as she walked down the hallway, her heart raced unevenly. She knew things could not continue as they were. The revelation she had found in the document, a concrete proof of Michael's frauds, seemed not only a path to the truth, but also a trap that could cost her everything. What truly frightened her was the idea that this truth could not only expose Michael, but also place her in a vulnerable position. On that rainy day, the atmosphere around her seemed to reflect her internal turmoil. Raindrops slid down the windows, and the sound of water falling was a constant reminder that something needed to change. Listening to the echoes of the rain, Rachel decided it was time to act, but what she didn't expect was that this action would lead her to an event that would change everything. As she headed back to the archive room, document in hand, she passed by Emily's desk. The young assistant was focused on her work, but noticed the tense expression on Rachel's face. An instinct to protect made Emily stand up. "Rachel, are you okay? You look different." The concern on Emily's face made Rachel hesitate. She wanted to share what she was feeling, but the urgency of her mission was stronger. "I'm fine, I just need to sort some things out," Rachel replied, trying to keep her voice steady. But as soon as she turned her back, Emily's gesture made her feel a pang in her chest. There was something special about the friendship blossoming between them, and Rachel wondered if she was willing to risk that in the name of truth. When she finally entered the archive room, adrenaline pushed her forward. She looked around, ensuring no one was watching her. She opened the document, and as she read, her heart sank. The evidence was clear, and the gravity of the situation hit her like a wave. Michael was not only committing fraud, but also manipulating others to cover up his actions. The revelation shook her deeply, and doubts began to form again in her mind. Was she ready for this fight? What would happen if she failed? Before we continue with this thrilling story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. And let us know in the comments which city you're watching this video from. At that moment, an unexpected noise startled her. The door to the archive room opened abruptly, and Michael entered, his piercing gaze fixed on her. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine, and the document slipped from her hands, falling to the floor. The world she had built around her courage crumbled in an instant. Michael stared at her with an enigmatic smile, but there was something more in his gaze, a recognition as if he knew she was about to cross a line. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" he asked, his tone mixing curiosity and threat. "You know this place isn't safe for you." She tried to muster the courage she had cultivated, but the words escaped her. Fear paralyzed her, and in a moment of weakness she found herself in the same place as always, under the control of someone who intimidated her. I was just organizing some documents," she stammered, her voice faltering. Michael stepped closer, and the atmosphere grew heavy. "You don't seem very confident, Rachel. Sometimes it's better not to get involved in matters you don't understand." He leaned in closer, and a sense of panic settled in her chest. Rachel knew she had to be strong, but the words she needed to say felt blocked by the pressure of the moment. Then, something inside her burst, the memory of her conversation with Emily, the friendship that was forming, and the idea of finally being seen as someone with a voice. All of it brought her to a breaking point. "I can't stay silent anymore," she declared, her voice firmer than she felt. "If you keep this up, I will expose the truth." Michael's expression shifted, and the tension in the air became palpable. He smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Do you really think you can challenge me, Rachel? Think twice before making that choice." The threat in his words was clear, and Rachel felt her determination waver. What had begun as a desire for justice was now becoming an emotional battleground. With her heart racing, she realized that the fight was not only against Michael, but also against her own fears and insecurities. The revelation that she had the capacity to fight, even while still terrified, made her reconsider everything she had planned. Her choice to expose Michael was not just about justice, it was about her freedom, her dignity, and the chance to shape her own destiny. In that moment, Rachel understood that power was not just in unmasking someone, but in finding the courage to be true to herself. The decision to act was now more than a response to fear. It was a step toward what she truly desired. And as the rain fell outside, she knew that the storm within her was just beginning. Rachel felt a knot in her stomach after her words. Michael's gaze wouldn't let her be. He was clearly surprised but also amused by her audacity. The smile that once seemed confident was now just a mask hiding his true intentions. She knew she had crossed a line, and from that moment on, nothing would be the same. After the brief exchange, Michael stepped back, but not without casting one last look that seemed to promise repercussions. "Be careful, Rachel. The truth can be more dangerous than you imagine." He left the room, leaving Rachel alone with her thoughts and the feeling that the ground had opened beneath her feet. The document that had fallen to the floor now felt like an unbearable weight. She crouched down to pick it up, her hands trembling. What had she done? She had challenged a man who wouldn't hesitate to destroy her life to protect his own lies. As she put the paper in her bag, Rachel realized she had entered a dangerous game, and the consequences could be catastrophic. That day, Rachel returned home with a sense of helplessness. The adrenaline had turned into a wave of anxiety, and she could hardly concentrate on anything. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman on the edge of an abyss. The reflection staring back at her showed not just fear, but also a glimmer of determination. She needed a plan, but how could she act without putting herself at risk? The next morning, Rachel decided to seek out Emily. The young assistant had become a sort of anchor amid the storm brewing in her life. They met at a cafe near the office. As they sipped their coffee, Rachel realized that words were not enough to express everything she was feeling. Emily, always perceptive, noticed that something was wrong. "You look even more worried than yesterday," Emily said softly. "What happened?" Rachel hesitated, but the confidence she had found the night before propelled her forward. "I discovered something about Michael. He's involved in fraud, and I told him I would expose it." Silence fell between them like a sharp blade. Emily seemed to process the information, and Rachel felt her heart race. "You did what?" Emily asked, a mix of concern and admiration in her voice. "This is dangerous, Rachel." "I know," Rachel replied, feeling the pressure build in her chest. "But I can't just stay silent. I can't allow myself to be an accomplice. But what if he finds out? What will you do?" Emily's concern was palpable, and Rachel felt a knot form in her throat. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I need to prepare for what comes next." The conversation made Rachel realize that in making this decision, she was not only challenging Michael, but also creating a new dynamic in her life. She needed to be careful, but she also needed support. What had once seemed like a solitary struggle was now transforming into an invitation for others to join her. In the following days, Rachel began to educate herself about the frauds Michael was committing. She spent hours reviewing documents, trying to compile evidence she could use. Each new discovery made her more determined, but also more anxious. The tension between her and Michael grew with each meeting at the office. He seemed more vigilant, like a predator who had noticed that its prey was more alert. One night, while reviewing information, Rachel received an unexpected message from Emily. "Can we meet? I have something important to discuss." Rachel's heart raced. What could be so urgent? When they met, Emily appeared nervous. "I spoke with some people about what you're doing," she began, "and some of them are willing to help. But we need to be careful. Michael is not someone to play with." Rachel felt a wave of gratitude. The friendship forming between them was now becoming a lifeline. "Thank you for being by my side," Rachel said. "That means a lot. But we need to have a plan." "We can't just act impulsively," Emily warned, her expression serious. "If Michael finds out we're moving against him, it could be dangerous." As they planned, Rachel realized that the battle she had chosen was not just against Michael, but also against her own fears. The truth, which had once seemed a burden, was now becoming a powerful weapon. But the vulnerability she felt in exposing herself to this fight was overwhelming. From that moment on, Rachel knew that every step she took would have consequences. She was no longer just fighting for justice, but for her own identity, and for a future where she could live without fear. A storm was brewing, and she was about to navigate through uncharted waters, but now she was not alone. Rachel was at a pivotal moment in her life. The sleepless nights and constant worries had brought her to a turning point. She was tired of living in fear and decided to face the challenge that Michael represented. The adrenaline that had once left her restless was now transforming into determination. Each day that passed, she felt stronger, more capable of dealing with the approaching storm. With Emily's support, Rachel discovered she was not alone in this fight. Together, they began to gather information and build a plan. Rachel realized that by accepting Emily's help, she was not only strengthening her position, but also opening her heart to friendship. This connection became an anchor in her life, a source of security that had previously been lacking. She was starting to trust herself, believing she could face any challenge that came her way. One morning, while reviewing documents, Rachel found crucial evidence that could change everything. Her heart raced. It was the proof she needed to confront Michael. But at the same time, anxiety set in. What if he discovers it before we're ready, she thought. This doubt was her greatest enemy, but she knew she couldn't let fear paralyze her. Instead, she took a deep breath and shared her discovery with Emily. Together, they began to outline the next steps. As they worked, Rachel reflected on her journey. Before, she felt like a shadow always at the mercy of others, but now she was becoming a woman who claimed her voice. The simple act of organizing and planning made her feel more confident. She was learning that true strength did not only lie in winning a battle, but in having the courage to fight for herself. As days went by, the pressure increased. Michael seemed more and more suspicious, and Rachel felt the tension in the air. But with Emily's help, she began to understand that it was not just a fight against Michael, it was a battle against her own insecurities. Every time she felt hesitant, she reminded herself that she was fighting for her truth. This new perspective encouraged her to keep going, even when fear threatened to overwhelm her. One night, while they were discussing the plan, Emily asked a question that made her reflect. "What do you hope to gain from all this, Rachel?" The question caught her off guard. She hesitated, but soon realized that her quest was not just for justice. It was about reclaiming her power, her voice, and her dignity. It was about understanding that true success was not measured in wealth or status, but in living authentically. Rachel began to apply the lessons she was learning. She allowed herself to feel fear, but she didn't let it paralyze her. Instead, she used that emotion as fuel. Each step she took brought her closer to a stronger version of herself. The friendship with Emily also became a source of learning. Together, they shared laughter, tears, and the strength that each brought to the other. It was a relationship that helped Rachel grow and see the world in a new way. Finally, the day of the confrontation arrived. Rachel felt her heart race as she prepared to face Michael. The anxiety was there, but now there was a spark of determination that accompanied her. She was no longer the scared woman she had been before. She was a woman who had allowed herself to grow, who had learned to trust herself and her choices. When she sat down in front of Michael, she took a deep breath and began to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but as the words flowed, she felt the strength growing inside her. Rachel began to expose the frauds, the lies, and the manipulation. And in doing so, she realized that she was not just challenging Michael, she was freeing herself from her own chains. In the end, regardless of the outcome, Rachel knew she had moved forward. She had overcome her fears, found friendship and support in an unexpected place, and most importantly, discovered her own strength. The journey was just beginning, but now she was ready to face any challenge the future might bring. Rachel had transformed, and in doing so, she had found a new purpose in her life. Rachel sat in a cold, austere room. The tension in the air was palpable. The clock on the wall seemed to tick each second like an eternity. She looked at Michael, who was sitting in front of her, with his arrogant smile and disdainful gaze. He seemed confident, as if he knew he had control of the situation. But Rachel was no longer the vulnerable woman he once knew. She had prepared for this moment, and determination pulsed in her veins. Taking slow, deep breaths, Rachel remembered all the nights she had reflected on her weaknesses. Now, those weaknesses had transformed into strength. Emily's words echoed in her mind. "You have power, Rachel. Don't let anyone take that away from you." With that in mind, she began to speak. "Michael, I'm not here to be intimidated," Rachel began, her voice steady, though a bit shaky at first. "I'm no longer the person you manipulated." She saw the look of surprise on his face, and that encouraged her to continue. "I discovered the truth. The documents you tried to hide, the lies you spread are now exposed. I can no longer and will no longer remain silent." Michael raised an eyebrow, but Rachel sensed that he was starting to lose his composure. He tried to interrupt her, but she wouldn't let him. The adrenaline coursed through her veins, and with every word she felt stronger. "Not only do I have evidence, but I also have the support of those who truly care. Emily and I worked together to understand what you did, and I won't let you get away with this." Michael's expression changed. He began to fidget in his seat, and that made Rachel feel even more powerful. She was not alone. She had Emily by her side and all the lessons she had learned along the way. "You tried to make me believe that I was incapable, that I needed you, but I realized that I don't need you. I am capable of standing up for myself and fighting for what is right." As the conversation progressed, the situation became increasingly tense. Michael, who had seemed so sure before, began to lose his cool. He tried to change the subject, attacking Rachel with sharp words, but she remained unfazed. Every insult she received was like fuel that made her even stronger. She had learned not to be swayed by provocation. "What you are doing is not just wrong, it's cruel, and I will not allow you to continue with this." The room was silent, and Rachel realized that her voice echoed. The verbal clash was becoming more intense, but she was ready for it. In a moment of clarity, she remembered all the times she had hesitated, the doubts that had nearly paralyzed her. But now, in that moment, she was living her truth. When Rachel finished speaking, the tension in the room was almost electric. Michael, now visibly irritated, stood up, but before he could say anything, Rachel interrupted him with new firmness. "This is the last time you try to intimidate me. I am here to claim my space and my voice. And you no longer have power over me." Those words were like a cry of freedom. Rachel realized that by confronting Michael, she was not only fighting against him, but also overcoming her own insecurities. She had finally freed herself from the chains that bound her. Relief and emotion washed over her, and she felt the urge to look out the window, where the sun was beginning to rise, bringing new light. Michael, powerless in the face of the strength Rachel had found, remained silent. He realized that his controlling tactics no longer worked. Rachel had evolved, and her friendship with Emily had solidified her determination. She was no longer alone. She had someone who believed in her, and that made all the difference. When Rachel left the room, a feeling of triumph enveloped her. She had faced her greatest challenge, and regardless of the immediate outcome, she knew she had gained her freedom. Along the way, she had learned that true success was not just about winning a battle, but discovering her own inner strength. The fear that once paralyzed her had transformed into courage. Rachel's journey was just beginning, but she was ready. The future, which had once seemed uncertain, now shone with new possibilities. The lessons she learned about friendship, strength, and self-confidence would stay with her forever. Rachel had transformed, And this transformation was just the beginning of a new and exciting chapter in her life. Rachel walked through the cold hallways of the building, each step echoing as a reminder of her newfound bravery. The adrenaline still pulsed through her veins, but now there was a sense of lightness that accompanied her. She had faced Michael and, more importantly, she had faced herself. The room where the confrontation had taken place had become a symbol of her transformation, a place where weakness had been replaced by strength. As she exited the building, Rachel spotted Emily waiting outside. Her friend's smile lit up her face, and Rachel felt a wave of gratitude. They hugged, and in that moment, Rachel realized how fundamental their friendship was. Emily exclaimed that Rachel was incredible, her eyes shining with pride. Rachel smiled shyly, but her confidence grew with the words of support. She replied that she couldn't have done it without Emily, acknowledging how Emily had helped her see that she was stronger than she thought. The two began walking together, and Rachel felt that each step was leading her toward a brighter future. The city around them appeared more vibrant, more alive. The sun was already high, reflecting the new light that had emerged in her life. However, the euphoria soon gave way to a new concern. Rachel knew that the battle with Michael was not over. He was a cunning man, and she feared the reprisals he might be planning. She asked Emily if she thought he would seek revenge, her voice a bit hesitant. Emily paused, thoughtful. She said it was possible, but now Rachel was prepared. She had knowledge and allies. They were not alone in this. These words brought some comfort, but Rachel still felt a weight in her heart. The fight against Michael was not just personal, it was also a fight for justice. She knew that many others had suffered under his control. The desire to help those people became an increasingly strong motivation. Rachel expressed her determination to do more than just defend herself and to ensure that this wouldn't happen to anyone else. Emily suggested that Rachel could start gathering with others who had gone through similar experiences. Together they could make a difference. This idea ignited a flame within Rachel. From that moment on, she would not only fight for herself, but also become a voice for those who could not defend themselves. The feeling of empowerment was contagious, and she knew she could count on Emily and others to create a support network. In the days that followed, Rachel dedicated herself to investigating and seeking support. She organized meetings with people who had faced similar situations, and soon a small community began to form. Together, they shared their stories, exchanged advice, and encouraged one another. Rachel realized that her own experience resonated with the struggles of others. The pain that had once isolated her now connected her to a larger group, and that was profoundly healing. Meanwhile, the repercussions of the confrontation with Michael began to spread. Some people who had previously hesitated to speak out started to do so, encouraged by the example Rachel had set. She felt motivated as she witnessed others gaining the courage to stand up and fight. Her transformation not only impacted her life, but also started to create a wave of change in the community. One night, while they were talking after a meeting, Emily commented on how much Rachel had changed. She noted that Rachel had once felt trapped, but now it was as if she was freeing herself every day. Rachel smiled, reflecting on everything that had happened. She admitted that she hadn't really known she had such strength within her. It felt like she was waking up to real life. Rachel's journey was far from over, but she was determined to keep fighting. She had found her voice and was ready to use it. Deep down, she knew that challenges would still come, but now she had a support network and a clear purpose. The future, which had once seemed murky, now shone with the certainty that together they could face any challenge. With each passing day, Rachel not only reaffirmed herself as a strong woman, but also became a leader in her community. She had learned that true strength was not just in winning individual battles, but in uniting people to fight for a better world. Rachel was finally living the life she had always wanted, and her journey of self-discovery and empowerment had transformed her forever. Now a changed woman, Rachel looked back at the path she had taken. Those difficult days, the moments of insecurity, and her confrontation with Michael seemed distant, but they were not in vain. Every step she had taken led her to a place of strength and determination. The fear that once dominated her was now a distant memory, replaced by the courage to fight for a fairer world for everyone. The community she had helped to form was thriving. The voices that had once been silenced now echoed with confidence, united by the desire for change. Rachel had become a leader, but she never forgot her roots. For her, true success was not just about winning personal battles, but about helping others find their own strength. The meetings had become a safe space where each shared story was a step toward healing. The pain that once isolated now connected. On the other hand, the shadow of Michael still loomed over the city. He was not someone who accepted defeat, and Rachel knew that reprisals were only a matter of time. But instead of fearing him, she prepared herself. With the help of her friends and the community, she began planning ways to expose the injustices he had committed. Information was now her greatest ally. Rachel researched, gathered evidence, and met with those who had also suffered under Michael's control. The unity of their strengths amplified Rachel's courage. One night, after yet another inspiring meeting, Rachel decided it was time to take action. With everyone's support, she organized a peaceful demonstration where each person could share their experiences and expose the injustices Michael had caused. The entire city mobilized, and on the day of the event, a crowd gathered in front of the building where it all began. The atmosphere was charged with emotion and determination. When Rachel stepped onto the stage, she looked at the crowd and felt a wave of hope. Today, we are not just here to talk about our pain, but to claim our right to a better future. Her voice resonated powerfully, and the applause encouraged her. She told her story, and those of so many others, and how Michael had tried to break them. With each word, she felt that revenge was not just an act of retribution, but an act of justice. The consequences were swift. The demonstration caught the media's attention, and stories of abuse began to surface. Michael, who had once been a feared figure, was now being exposed. People who had felt alone began to unite, and the pressure on him grew. Finally, the justice Rachel had sought began to materialize. Michael was investigated and in no time arrested for his actions. Looking back, Rachel realized that true victory was not just in defeating an enemy, but in rising up and uniting people around a greater purpose. Her journey of self-discovery had taught her that true strength lies in unity and mutual support. She not only avenged herself against Michael, but also helped free others who had been oppressed by him. Now, with the city breathing an air of hope, Rachel knew her work was not finished. She had become a voice for many, and that filled her with pride. Her story was proof that even in the face of adversity, the light of courage and friendship can illuminate the way. And so, Rachel invites you to reflect on your own experiences. We all face challenges, but true transformation happens when we decide to come together and fight for a better future. Share your stories and inspire others to find their strength. Together we can make a difference. Like and subscribe so that more people can benefit from these stories of overcoming. Change begins with a step, and that step could be yours now. We have reached the end of this touching story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Right now there's a playlist of videos on your screen. If you want to keep watching these moving stories, just click on it to start watching. And now, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from and leave your like to support our work. Now, a sincere question. Do you agree with what happened in the story? We want to know your opinion. Until the next video.